I can't believe you're leaving us, I said, my voice trembling as I clutched Samuel's hands. The bustling airport around us seemed to fade into the background, leaving just the two of us standing there in the terminal. My son, my only son, was about to board a plane to California, and it felt like my heart was being ripped out. Mom, it's going to be fine. Samuel reassured me, his bright blue eyes, so much like his father's, filled with excitement. This is a huge opportunity for me. I nodded, trying to muster a smile. I know, sweetheart. I'm just going to miss you so much. Samuel hugged me tightly, and I closed my eyes, savoring the moment. My mind flashed back to the days when he was a little boy, running around the yard with his toy trucks. How quickly time had flown. Take care of yourself, okay? I said, pulling back to look at him. And call us often. I will, Mom. I promise. He kissed my cheek and picked up his carry-on bag. I'll call you as soon as I land. As I watched him walk away, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Turning, I saw Patrick, his face a mask of calm strength. He'll be all right, Nora, he said softly. He's a smart kid. I nodded, leaning into my husband's embrace. I know. It's just hard. We stood there for a moment, watching as Samuel disappeared through the security checkpoint. Then, hand in hand, we made our way back to the car. The house felt emptier without Samuel's presence. Patrick and I tried to keep busy, filling our days with gardening and small projects around the house. But every corner of our home seemed to echo with memories of our son. One evening, as we sat down to dinner, the phone rang. I hurried to answer it, hoping it was Samuel calling to check in. Hello, I said, my heart racing with anticipation. Is this Nora? A woman's voice asked, unfamiliar and cold. Yes, this is she. Who's calling? This is Ava, the woman replied, her tone sharp. I'm Samuel's girlfriend. I felt a jolt of surprise. Samuel had never mentioned a girlfriend. Oh, I see. Is Samuel there? Can I speak with him? He's busy right now, Ava said dismissively. I just wanted to let you know that he's fine and that you don't need to worry about him. Well, thank you for letting me know, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But I'd still like to speak with my son. I'll tell him you called, Ava said curtly before hanging up. I stood there, staring at the phone in my hand. Patrick looked up from his plate, concern etched on his face. Who was that? Samuel's girlfriend, I replied, still in shock. She said he's fine, but she wouldn't let me talk to him. Patrick frowned. That's odd. Why wouldn't she let you talk to him? I don't know, I admitted, a knot forming in my stomach. But I don't like it. Days turned into weeks, and Samuel's calls became less frequent. Whenever I did manage to get him on the phone, Ava was always hovering in the background, her presence palpable even through the line. One evening, as Patrick and I sat in the living room, the phone rang again. I answered it quickly, hoping it was Samuel. Mom, it's me, Samuel said, his voice sounding distant. Samuel, it's so good to hear your voice. How are you? I'm fine, Mom. Listen, I need to tell you something. My heart sank at the seriousness in his tone. What is it, sweetheart? Ava and I are getting married. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. Married? But you've only just met her. I love her, Mom, Samuel said firmly, and I want you and Dad to be happy for us. I glanced at Patrick, who was listening intently. He shook his head, his expression mirroring my own disbelief. Samuel, are you sure about this? I asked, my voice trembling. Marriage is a big step. I know it is, he replied. But Ava and I are sure. We want to build a life together. I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. All right, Samuel. If this is what you truly want, then we'll support you. Thank you, Mom, he said, relief evident in his voice. It means a lot to me. After we hung up, I turned to Patrick, tears streaming down my face. What are we going to do? Patrick wrapped his arms around me, his voice steady and reassuring. We'll figure it out, Nora. We'll figure it out. I paced the living room, my mind racing with the news of Samuel's impending marriage to Ava. Patrick sat quietly in his armchair, his brow furrowed in thought. The air was thick with unspoken worries. "Patrick, I just don't understand it," I said, breaking the silence. "How could he make such a life-changing decision so quickly?" Patrick sighed, rubbing his temples. "He's an adult, Nora. We have to trust that he's making the right choice for himself. But Ava, there's something off about her. I felt it the moment I spoke to her on the phone." I insisted, my voice rising with frustration. Before Patrick could respond, the phone rang, slicing through the tension. I grabbed it, hoping it was Samuel calling to ease our minds. "Hello," I answered, my heart pounding. "Mom, it's me." Samuel's voice came through, but it was strained, almost defensive. "Samuel, we need to talk about this wedding," I said, trying to keep my tone calm. "There's nothing to talk about," he replied curtly. "Ava and I are getting married, and that's final." "But Samuel, we don't even know her," I protested. "We haven't had a chance to meet her, to see if she's right for you." "Mom, I'm not a child," he snapped. "I don't need your approval." I felt a lump form in my throat. "Samuel, please, just listen." "No, you listen," he interrupted. "Ava and I are in love, and we're getting married. If you can't accept that, then maybe we shouldn't talk until you can." The line went dead, and I stood there, stunned. Patrick was by my side in an instant, his hand on my shoulder. "What did he say?" Patrick asked, his voice filled with concern. He said if we can't accept his decision, then he doesn't want to talk to us." I whispered, the words barely making it past the lump in my throat. Patrick pulled me into a hug, his embrace warm and reassuring. "We'll figure this out, Nora. We always do." Days turned into weeks, and the silence from Samuel grew deafening. I tried calling him, leaving messages, but there was no response. The distance between us felt insurmountable. One afternoon, as I was tending to the garden, the phone rang. I rushed inside, hoping against hope that it was Samuel. "Hello," I answered breathlessly. "Mrs. Thompson?" a woman's voice said. It was Ava. "Yes, this is Nora," I replied, my heart sinking. "I just wanted to let you know that Samuel and I have set a date for the wedding," Ava said, her tone dripping with condescension. "We'd love for you and Patrick to attend, of course." I took a deep breath, trying to keep my composure. "Thank you for letting us know. When is the date?" "Next month on the 15th, Ava replied. "We'll send you the details." "All right," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. "We'll be there." "Good," Ava said, and then she hung up without another word. I stood there, the phone still in my hand, feeling a mix of anger and helplessness. Patrick walked in, his face etched with concern. "Who was it?" he asked. "Ava. She called to tell us the wedding date," I said, my voice trembling. "Next month on the 15th. Patrick's jaw tightened. "We need to be there, Nora. We need to support Samuel, even if we have our doubts." I nodded, tears welling up in my eyes. "I just hope we're not making a mistake by going." The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of anxiety and unanswered questions. Patrick and I tried to stay busy, but the looming date hung over us like a dark cloud. Finally, the day arrived. We flew to California, our hearts heavy with uncertainty. As we arrived at the small, picturesque chapel, I couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. Inside, the atmosphere was tense. Samuel greeted us with a strained smile, while Ava stood by his side, her eyes cold and calculating. "Mom, Dad, I'm glad you could make it," Samuel said, his voice tight. "We wouldn't miss it for the world," Patrick replied, his tone steady. As the ceremony began, I couldn't help but feel a knot of dread tightening in my stomach. The vows were said, the rings exchanged, but all I could see was the distance growing between us and our son. After the ceremony, during the reception, I found a moment to pull Samuel aside. "Samuel, are you sure about this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of defiance and desperation. "Mom, I love Ava. This is what I want." I nodded, my heart breaking. "I just want you to be happy, Samuel." "I am," he insisted, but I could see the doubt flickering in his eyes. As the night wore on, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger storm. The weeks following Samuel and Ava's wedding were a blur of tension and unease. Patrick and I tried to settle back into our routine, but the gnawing worry about Samuel's choice lingered like a dark cloud over our heads. We hadn't heard much from him since the wedding, and every day without a call felt like an eternity. One evening, as Patrick and I were sitting down to dinner, the phone rang. I rushed to answer it, my heart pounding with hope and dread. "Hello, Mom, it's me." Samuel's voice came through, sounding strained and weary. "Samuel, it's so good to hear from you," I said, relief flooding through me. "How are you?" "I'm fine, Mom," he replied, but there was a hesitation in his voice that set off alarm bells in my mind. "Listen, I need to tell you something." I held my breath, waiting for him to continue. "Ava and I are moving back to town," he said, his words tumbling out in a rush. "What? Why?" I asked, my mind racing with questions. "Ava got a job offer here, and we decided it would be best for us to be closer to family," Samuel explained, but there was an edge to his voice that made me uneasy. That's wonderful, Samuel," I said, forcing a smile. "When will you be arriving?" "Next week," he replied. "We'll need a place to stay until we find a house. I was hoping we could stay with you and Dad." I glanced at Patrick, who was listening intently. He nodded, his expression serious. "Of course, Samuel. You're always welcome here," I said, though a knot of worry tightened in my stomach. "Thanks, Mom," Samuel said, sounding relieved. "We'll see you soon." As I hung up the phone, Patrick took my hand. "What's going on?" he asked, his voice filled with concern. "Samuel and Ava are moving back to town," I said, my voice trembling. "They'll be staying with us for a while." Patrick's brow furrowed. "This could be a chance for us to get to know Ava better. Maybe things will work out." "I hope so," I said, but the unease in my heart remained. The following week, Samuel and Ava arrived with their belongings in tow. Our home, once a sanctuary of peace, was now filled with tension and unease. Ava's presence was like a dark shadow, her cold demeanor and sharp words cutting through the air. One evening, as we sat around the dinner table, the tension reached a boiling point. Ava had been criticizing everything from the food to the decor, and I could see Patrick's patience wearing thin. "Nora, do you always overcook the vegetables?" Ava sneered, pushing her plate away. I clenched my fists under the table, trying to keep my composure. "I'm sorry, Ava. I'll try to do better next time." Patrick's jaw tightened, and he opened his mouth to speak, but Samuel cut him off. "Ava, that's enough," he said, his voice firm. Ava glared at him, her eyes flashing with anger. "Don't you dare take their side, Samuel. We're your family now." Samuel looked torn, his loyalty divided between his wife and his parents. "Ava, please, let's just have a peaceful dinner." But Ava wasn't backing down. "No, Samuel. Your parents need to understand that things are different now. We're not here to be treated like guests." Patrick's face darkened, and he stood up, his voice low and steady. "Ava, you are a guest in our home. We have welcomed you with open arms, and all we ask is for a little respect in return." Ava's eyes narrowed, and she stood up as well, her posture defiant. "Respect? You think I should respect you after the way you've treated Samuel?" Patrick's eyes flashed with anger. "We have always treated Samuel with love and respect. It's you who has come between us." The room fell silent, the air thick with tension. Samuel looked like he was about to say something, but Ava grabbed his arm and pulled him towards the door. "We're leaving," she said, her voice cold and final. Samuel hesitated, looking back at us with a mixture of guilt and frustration. "Mom, Dad, I'm sorry," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. As they left the house, the door slamming behind them, I felt a mixture of anger and heartbreak. Patrick wrapped his arms around me, his voice steady and reassuring. "We'll get through this, Nora. We'll get through this." But as the days turned into weeks, the distance between us and Samuel grew wider. Ava's influence over him was stronger than ever, and I couldn't shake the feeling that we were losing our son. Then, one fateful afternoon, Patrick collapsed in the garden. The diagnosis was swift and brutal: terminal cancer. The news hit us like a freight train, and our world was turned upside down. Samuel and Ava's reaction was a cold reminder of how far they had drifted. When we called to tell them the news, Ava's voice was dismissive, almost indifferent. "We'll come by when we can," she said, as if it were an inconvenience. Patrick's eyes hardened, a steely resolve forming in his gaze. "We need to protect our future, Nora," he said, his voice unwavering. "I have a plan." As the days passed, Patrick's condition worsened, but his determination never wavered. He spent hours in his study, working on a plan to ensure that I would be taken care of after he was gone. And then, one evening, he called me into the study, a stack of papers in his hand. "Nora, this is my will," he said, his voice steady. "It's conditional, and it's designed to protect you from Ava's greed." I took the papers, my hands trembling. "Patrick, are you sure about this?" He nodded, his eyes filled with resolve. "We need to be strong, Nora, for Samuel's sake and for ours." As I looked at the will, I couldn't help but feel a sense of foreboding. The storm was far from over, and I knew that the battle for our family's future was just beginning. The days following Patrick's diagnosis were a blur of hospital visits, consultations, and a growing sense of dread. Watching the man I loved deteriorate before my eyes was a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. But through it all, Patrick remained resolute, his focus unwavering on his plan to protect me. One afternoon, as I sat by Patrick's bedside, the door creaked open and Samuel walked in, followed closely by Ava. My heart ached at the sight of my son, but Ava's presence cast a dark shadow over the room. "Mom, Dad," Samuel said, his voice strained. "How are you holding up?" Patrick managed a weak smile. "We're getting by, son. It's good to see you." Ava stood by the door, her arms crossed and her expression impatient. "We can't stay long," she said coldly. "We have other things to attend to." I bit back a retort, forcing myself to stay calm. "Samuel, we need to talk about the future," I said, my voice steady. "There are some important decisions that need to be made." Samuel glanced at Ava, who rolled her eyes. "What kind of decisions?" he asked, his tone wary. Patrick cleared his throat, his voice weak but determined. "I've made some arrangements to ensure that Nora is taken care of after I'm gone. It's all in the will." Ava's eyes narrowed, and she took a step forward. "What kind of arrangements?" she demanded. Patrick's gaze hardened. "That's between Nora and me. You'll find out in due time." Samuel looked conflicted, torn between his loyalty to us and his wife's influence. "Dad, we just want to make sure everything is handled properly." "Everything will be handled properly," Patrick said firmly. "You have my word." Ava's lips curled into a sneer. "We'll see about that." As they left the room, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. Patrick reached for my hand, his grip weak but reassuring. "Stay strong, Nora. We can get through this." The days passed in a haze of worry and sorrow. Patrick's condition worsened, and every moment with him felt like a precious gift. Then, one evening, as the sun set outside the hospital window, Patrick took my hand and looked into my eyes. "Nora, promise me you'll follow through with the plan," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I promise, Patrick," I said, my heart breaking. "I'll do whatever it takes." With a final weary smile, Patrick closed his eyes and took his last breath. The room fell silent, the weight of his absence crushing down on me. The funeral was a somber affair, filled with friends and family who had come to pay their respects. Samuel and Ava stood off to the side, their expressions unreadable. As the service ended, I couldn't shake the feeling that this was just the beginning of a much larger battle. After the ceremony, Samuel and Ava approached me, their faces masks of concern. "Mom, we need to talk about the will," Samuel said, his voice tense. "Not now, Samuel," I said, my voice trembling. "This isn't the time." Ava's eyes flashed with impatience. "We need to know what's in it. We have a right to know." I took a deep breath, trying to steady myself. "You'll find out soon enough. For now, Let's focus on honoring Patrick's memory. As they walked away, I felt a surge of determination. Patrick had trusted me to carry out his plan, and I wouldn't let him down. The following week, the lawyer called us in to read the will. Samuel and Ava sat across from me, their expressions a mix of anticipation and impatience. The lawyer cleared his throat and began to read. To my beloved wife, Nora, I leave the house and all its contents. To my son, Samuel, I leave a trust fund, contingent upon certain conditions. Ava's eyes narrowed. What conditions? The lawyer continued. The conditions are that Samuel must demonstrate financial responsibility and show that he is capable of managing the trust in a manner that honors my legacy. Samuel looked stunned, his face pale. What does that mean? It means, the lawyer explained, that the trust will be managed by a trustee, and Samuel will receive disbursements based on his ability to meet the conditions set forth in the will. Ava's face twisted with rage. This is ridiculous. We deserve more than this. I stood up, my voice steady and firm. Patrick wanted to ensure that our family's future was secure. These conditions are in place to protect us all. Samuel looked at me, his eyes filled with a mix of anger and betrayal. Mom, how could you let this happen? I did what I had to do, I said, my heart aching. For all of us. As the lawyer finished reading the will, I knew that the battle was far from over. But I also knew that I had the strength to face whatever came next. Patrick's plan was in motion, and I would see it through to the end. The days following the reading of Patrick's will were fraught with tension. Samuel and Ava's discontent was palpable, and I could feel the storm brewing just beneath the surface. I tried to keep myself busy, managing the household and attending to the myriad details that come with losing a spouse. But the weight of the impending conflict hung heavy over me. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I heard the front door slam. Samuel and Ava had returned from another fruitless meeting with the trustee. I braced myself for the confrontation I knew was coming. Samuel stormed into the kitchen, his face flushed with anger. Mom, this is ridiculous. The trustee is making it impossible for us to access the funds. We need that money. I looked up from the stove, meeting his gaze. Samuel, the conditions in the will are there for a reason. Your father wanted to ensure that you were responsible with the inheritance. Ava barged in, her eyes blazing with fury. This is all you're doing, isn't it, Nora? You convinced Patrick to set up these ridiculous conditions to keep us from what we deserve. I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Ava, this was Patrick's decision. He wanted to protect our family's future. Ava's lips curled into a sneer. Protect? Or control? You're just trying to keep us under your thumb. Samuel stepped forward, his voice trembling with frustration. Mom, we need that money to start our lives. Ava's job isn't enough to cover everything, and we're drowning in debt. I felt a pang of sympathy for my son, but I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. Samuel, you need to show the trustee that you can manage the funds responsibly. That's what your father wanted. Ava let out a bitter laugh. Responsibly? This is a joke. We're being treated like children. I turned off the stove, wiping my hands on a towel. Ava, Samuel, I understand your frustration, but these are the terms of the will. We all have to abide by them. Samuel's eyes filled with tears of anger and desperation. Mom, please. There has to be another way. I reached out to him, my heart breaking. Samuel, I love you, but I can't go against Patrick's wishes. He believed in you. He believed you could meet these conditions. Ava's face twisted with rage. This isn't over, Nora. We'll find a way to get what's rightfully ours. As they stormed out of the kitchen, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. I sank into a chair, my mind racing with the implications of their words. Ava's determination to undermine the will was a clear sign that the battle was far from over. The next morning, I received a call from the trustee. Mrs. Thompson, I wanted to inform you that Samuel and Ava have requested a formal review of the will's conditions. I felt a knot of dread in my stomach. What does that mean? It means they are challenging the conditions in court, the trustee explained. They believe the terms are unreasonable, and are seeking to have them overturned. I closed my eyes, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. Thank you for letting me know. As I hung up the phone, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't let Ava and Samuel's greed destroy the legacy Patrick had worked so hard to protect. I needed to stand firm, not just for myself, but for the memory of the man I loved. That evening, I called a family meeting. Samuel and Ava sat across from me, their expressions a mix of defiance and anticipation. I received a call from the trustee today. I began, my voice steady. I know you're challenging the will's conditions in court. Samuel looked away, guilt flickering in his eyes, but Ava stared at me with cold determination. We deserve that money, Nora. We won't stop until we get it. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to say. I understand that you're upset, but I won't let you destroy Patrick's legacy. If you want to challenge the will, then so be it. But know this, I will fight to protect what Patrick wanted for our family. Samuel's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment, I saw a glimpse of the boy I had raised, the boy who had always looked up to his father. But Ava's grip on his arm tightened, and the moment passed. This isn't over, Ava said, her voice cold and final. As they left the house, I felt a mix of fear and resolve. The battle ahead would be difficult, but I knew I had to stand my ground. Patrick had trusted me to protect our family's future, and I would do whatever it took to honor his wishes. The stakes had never been higher, and the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. But I was ready to face whatever came next, determined to see Patrick's plan through to the end. The day of Patrick's funeral dawned gray and somber, fitting for the occasion. I dressed in my black dress, the one Patrick always said made me look elegant, and tried to steady my trembling hands. Today was going to be difficult enough without the added tension of Samuel and Ava's presence. The church was filled with friends and family, their faces etched with sorrow and respect. The ceremony was beautiful, a fitting tribute to the man who had been my rock for so many years. But as I stood by the casket, accepting condolences, my mind was elsewhere, bracing for the inevitable confrontation. Samuel and Ava arrived late, slipping into the back pew just as the service began. I could feel their eyes on me, a mix of resentment and impatience. When the service ended, and everyone began to file out to the cemetery, they approached me. "Mom, we need to talk," Samuel said, his voice tight with urgency. "Not now, Samuel," I replied, my voice barely above a whisper. "This is not the time or place." Ava stepped forward, her eyes cold and calculating. "We can't wait any longer. We need to resolve this now." I looked around at the mourners, their faces filled with sympathy and concern. "Fine. Let's go to the house." The ride home was silent, the tension palpable. When we arrived, I led them into the living room, the room that had once been filled with laughter and love. Now it felt like a battleground. "All right," I said, turning to face them. "What is so urgent that it couldn't wait?" Samuel looked at Ava, who nodded, urging him to speak. "Mom, we need access to the trust. The trustee is making it impossible for us to get anything. We need you to intervene." I took a deep breath, the weight of Patrick's wishes pressing down on me. "Samuel, you know I can't do that. Your father set those conditions for a reason." Ava's face twisted with anger. "This is absurd. We're being treated like children. We have rights." I met her gaze, my own anger rising. "And Patrick had the right to ensure his legacy was protected. You need to meet the conditions, Ava. That's the only way." Samuel's eyes filled with desperation. "Mom, please. We're drowning in debt. Ava's job isn't enough, and we're at risk of losing everything." I felt a pang of sympathy for my son, but I couldn't let that cloud my judgment. "Samuel, I love you, but I can't go against Patrick's wishes. He believed in you, and so do I. You can meet the conditions." Ava let out a bitter laugh. "This is all a power play, isn't it? You just want to control us." I shook my head, my heart breaking. "No, Ava. This is about protecting our family's future. Patrick wanted to ensure that you were responsible." Samuel's face crumpled, and he turned away, his shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Ava's eyes blazed with fury. "This isn't over, Nora. We'll fight this in court if we have to." As they stormed out of the house, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. I sank into a chair, my mind racing with the implications of their words. Ava's determination to undermine the will was a clear sign that the battle was far from over. The next morning, I received a call from the trustee. "Mrs. Thompson, I wanted to inform you that Samuel and Ava have officially filed a challenge to the will's conditions." I felt a knot of dread in my stomach. What does that mean? "It means they are seeking to have the conditions overturned in court," the trustee explained. "They believe the terms are unreasonable and are arguing that they should have immediate access to the funds." I closed my eyes, the weight of the situation pressing down on me. "Thank you for letting me know." As I hung up the phone, I knew I had to make a decision. I couldn't let Ava and Samuel's greed destroy the legacy Patrick had worked so hard to protect. I needed to stand firm, not just for myself, but for the memory of the man I loved. That evening, I called a family meeting. Samuel and Ava sat across from me, their expressions a mix of defiance and anticipation. "I received a call from the trustee today," I began, my voice steady. "I know you're challenging the will's conditions in court." Samuel looked away, guilt flickering in his eyes, but Ava stared at me with cold determination. "We deserve that money, Nora. We won't stop until we get it." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what I had to say. "I understand that you're upset, but I won't let you destroy Patrick's legacy. If you want to challenge the will, then so be it. But know this: I will fight to protect what Patrick wanted for our family." Samuel's eyes filled with tears, and for a moment I saw a glimpse of the boy I had raised, the boy who had always looked up to his father. But Ava's grip on his arm tightened, and the moment passed. "This isn't over," Ava said, her voice cold and final. As they left the house, I felt a mix of fear and resolve. The battle ahead would be difficult, but I knew I had to stand my ground. Patrick had trusted me to protect our family's future, and I would do whatever it took to honor his wishes. The stakes had never been higher, and the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. But I was ready to face whatever came next, determined to see Patrick's plan through to the end. The courtroom was packed, the air thick with anticipation and tension. The judge's gavel echoed through the room, calling for order. Samuel and Ava sat at their table, their lawyer whispering last-minute advice. I sat across from them, my heart pounding in my chest. This was it, the moment that would determine the future of Patrick's legacy. The proceedings began with the lawyer representing Samuel and Ava presenting their case. He argued that the conditions in Patrick's will were unreasonable, and that they unfairly restricted Samuel and Ava's access to the inheritance. He painted a picture of a young couple struggling under the weight of debt, desperate for the funds that were rightfully theirs. I listened, my anger simmering just beneath the surface. This was exactly what Patrick had feared, that their greed would blind them to the true purpose of the will. When it was our turn, my lawyer stood up, his voice steady and confident. "Your Honor, the conditions set forth in Patrick Thompson's will were designed to ensure that his son, Samuel, demonstrated financial responsibility. Patrick wanted to protect his family's future, and these conditions reflect that desire. Samuel and Ava have not shown that they can meet these conditions, and therefore, the terms of the will should stand." The judge listened intently, his expression unreadable. As the lawyers continued their arguments, I glanced over at Samuel. His face was a mask of tension and uncertainty, a stark contrast to Ava's unyielding determination. My heart ached for my son, but I knew I had to stay strong. Finally, the judge called for a recess, giving everyone a chance to regroup. I stepped outside the courtroom, the cool air a welcome relief. Samuel followed me, his face filled with a mix of anger and desperation. "Mom, please," he said, his voice trembling. "We need that money. Ava and I are drowning in debt. Can't you see that?" I took a deep breath, my resolve hardening. "Samuel, I understand that you're struggling, but your father set those conditions for a reason. He believed in you. He believed you could meet them." Samuel's eyes filled with tears. "But Ava," She can't take the pressure. She's been talking about leaving if we don't get the money. I can't lose her, Mom. My heart broke for him, but I couldn't let my emotions cloud my judgment. Samuel, if Ava truly loves you, she will stand by you no matter what. This money should not be the foundation of your relationship. Samuel looked away, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I don't know what to do. I reached out, placing a hand on his arm. You need to show the trustee that you can manage the funds responsibly. That's the only way to honor your father's wishes. Before Samuel could respond, Ava stormed out of the courthouse, her eyes blazing with fury. Samuel, we need to talk. Now. Samuel glanced at me, his eyes filled with a mixture of guilt and helplessness. I'll be right back, Mom. As they walked away, I felt a wave of exhaustion wash over me. The battle was far from over, and I knew that the next few hours would be crucial. When the court reconvened, the judge called for closing arguments. My lawyer stood up, his voice firm and unwavering. Your Honor, Patrick Thompson's will was designed to protect his family's future. The conditions he set forth are reasonable and reflect his desire to ensure that his son demonstrates financial responsibility. We ask that the will be upheld as written. Samuel and Ava's lawyer countered, arguing that the conditions were punitive and unfair. He claimed that they were being denied their rightful inheritance, and that the terms of the will should be overturned. The judge listened carefully, his expression thoughtful. After what felt like an eternity, he finally spoke. I have reviewed the arguments presented by both parties. It is clear that Patrick Thompson's will was designed with the intention of ensuring financial responsibility and protecting his family's future. Therefore, I find that the conditions set forth in the will are reasonable and should be upheld. A wave of relief washed over me, but it was quickly overshadowed by the sight of Samuel's devastated expression. Ava's face twisted with rage as she stood up, her voice rising in anger. This isn't fair. We deserve that money. The judge's gavel came down sharply. Order in the court. As the courtroom began to empty, Samuel approached me, his eyes filled with sorrow. Mom, I don't know what to do. Ava is furious, and I feel like I'm losing everything. I took his hand, my heart aching for him. Samuel, you have the strength to get through this. Your father believed in you, and so do I. You can meet those conditions. You just have to believe in yourself. Samuel nodded, his eyes filled with determination. I'll try, Mom. I'll try. As we left the courthouse, I felt a sense of resolve settle over me. The battle was far from over, but I knew that I had the strength to see it through. Patrick's legacy would be protected, and I would do whatever it took to honor his wishes. The stakes had never been higher, and the path ahead was fraught with uncertainty. But I was ready to face whatever came next, determined to see Patrick's plan through to the end. The days following the court's decision were filled with a tense silence. Samuel and Ava had retreated into their own world, their anger and frustration simmering just beneath the surface. I tried to maintain a semblance of normalcy, but the weight of the conflict hung heavy over our home. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I heard raised voices coming from the living room. I hurried in to find Samuel and Ava locked in a heated argument. You promised me, Samuel. You said we'd get the money. Ava's voice was sharp, her eyes blazing with fury. I tried, Ava. I did everything I could. Samuel's voice trembled with desperation. Well, it wasn't enough. I'm done with this. I'm done with you. Ava spat, grabbing her coat and heading for the door. Ava, wait. Samuel pleaded, but she was already gone, the door slamming shut behind her. Samuel sank onto the couch, his head in his hands. I approached him cautiously, my heart aching for my son. Samuel. He looked up, his eyes filled with tears. Mom, what am I going to do? Ava's gone, and I'm drowning in debt. I don't know how to fix this. I sat down beside him, taking his hand in mine. Samuel, you need to focus on getting your life back on track. The conditions in the will are there to help you, not to punish you. You can do this. I believe in you. Samuel shook his head, his voice filled with despair. I don't know if I can. I've made so many mistakes. I squeezed his hand, my voice steady and reassuring. We all make mistakes, Samuel. It's how we learn from them that matters. Your father believed in you, and so do I. You have the strength to turn this around. Samuel looked at me, a flicker of hope in his eyes. Do you really think I can do it? I know you can, I said, my voice filled with conviction. You just need to take it one step at a time. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity. Samuel threw himself into meeting the conditions of the will, working tirelessly to prove his financial responsibility. He met with the trustee regularly, showing steady progress and determination. Ava's absence was a constant reminder of the turmoil that had brought us to this point, but it also gave Samuel the space he needed to focus on himself. Slowly but surely, he began to rebuild his life piece by piece. One evening, as we sat on the porch watching the sunset, Samuel turned to me, a look of gratitude in his eyes. Mom, I don't know what I would have done without you. Thank you for believing in me. I smiled, my heart swelling with pride. You don't need to thank me, Samuel. I'm just glad to see you finding your way. As the weeks turned into months, Samuel's progress continued. He met the conditions of the will, and the trustee began to release the funds in increments. Samuel used the money wisely, paying off debts and investing in his future. One day, he came to me with a look of determination on his face. Mom, I've decided to go back to school. I want to get my degree and build a better life for myself. I felt a surge of pride and relief. That's wonderful, Samuel. Your father would be so proud of you. As Samuel embarked on this new chapter of his life, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The storm that had threatened to tear our family apart had passed, and we had emerged stronger for it. One evening, as I sat in the living room, the phone rang. It was Ava. Her voice was cold and distant. Nora, I just wanted to let you know that I'm filing for divorce. Samuel and I are done. I felt a pang of sadness for my son, but I also knew that this was a necessary step in his journey. Thank you for letting me know, Ava. I hope you find what you're looking for. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of closure. Ava's manipulative influence was finally gone, and Samuel was free to build the life he deserved. In the months that followed, Samuel flourished. He excelled in his studies, made new friends, and found a sense of purpose that had been missing for so long. Our relationship grew stronger, built on a foundation of trust and mutual respect. One evening, as we sat together on the porch, Samuel turned to me, his eyes filled with gratitude. Mom, thank you for everything. I couldn't have done this without you. I smiled, my heart full. You did this, Samuel. You found the strength within yourself. Your father would be so proud of you. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over our home, I felt a deep sense of peace. Patrick's legacy was secure, and our family had emerged from the storm stronger than ever. The journey had been difficult, but it had also been a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her son. And as I looked at Samuel, I knew that he had learned a profound life lesson. That true strength comes from within, and that with determination and support, anything is possible.